this morning. We're having Dr. Kamal Yusuf Tomi. He's a professor of mechanical engineering at MIT. We're pleased to have him today to give us his talk about innovation and innovators. We want to have his experience in MIT. This session is thank you for coming at this short notice. It was a combination work with the Institution of Entrepreneurship, with the Institute of, the Scientific Research Department. So, welcome, Dr. Yusuf. Can you come to the lecture?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. It's always a great pleasure to be in the kingdom. In the last 30 years or so, I have the great opportunity to work with leaders and researchers at the best, some of the best maybe institutions in the world. These include universities, research centers, multinationals, government agencies. In the last 20 years or so, I became very interested in how they developed into leading institutions, leading nations, and how they turned innovative, became innovative and very competitive in what they do. Sorry about that. So in this brief presentation, I wanted to emphasize the importance of innovation and also the environment that is needed, so that you can have an effective system for innovation. And I wanted to start maybe with a simple example. If we can think about the economic impact of a country like Canada, for example, and a university, and then whether their economic impact at the international level can be the same. Of course, Canada is a big country, maybe almost 37 million people, about 10 million square kilometers. Their GDP is about maybe $2 trillion a year. Most universities are maybe small in size. I wrote here about 1 square kilometers because MIT is about 1 square kilometer. Okay. Jamiat al-Malik Saud, mashallah, is much bigger in size. And then in terms of the people, if you count maybe alumni and so on, some universities are much bigger in terms of people. I put here maybe about 100,000. At MIT, we are maybe less than 25,000 people. The students are between 10,000 and 11,000. The faculty, professors about 1,000. And then researchers and administration and so on, maybe 25,000 total. But in the end, we want to ask the question whether a university has the same economic impact as a leading country like Canada, the 10th largest economy in the world. If we look at some universities like Indira Gandhi National Open University in Delhi, so this has about 4 million students. And then the University of the Philippines, Los Banos campus, and if you include also the land grants, so the size of that campus is about 146 square kilometers, big in size. But neither one of these universities is the answer. And so the question is still holds, can a university be at the same level as a leading country like Canada? So that means if there is a chance for that, it has to be people, because at the universities, we don't make products. Usually, we don't make products. We don't have natural resources. We have people, right? So that means the people should be the ones who make the difference. So let me step back and look, what makes, successful nations. So usually they are divided into maybe 3 stages. One that they call a basic factor. So this includes institutions, it includes infrastructure, the environment for microeconomics, health, and primary school education primarily. So this is the basic one. If you go to the second stage, so this is what they call the efficiency enhancers. It includes higher education, the efficiency in the market of goods, efficiency in the labor market, the market size, the technology readiness of the nation. And so, so the nation that has these systems at an acceptable level, right? So that has these efficiency enhancers with the basic factors. However, if you go to the third level, this is like the innovation and the sophistication in business. That is, I think, the top level that one would reach. And I, on purpose, made a gap between the first 2 stages, a small gap, and then a bigger gap here. I know that the pointer, yeah, between this side and this one, right? And so these are, in fact, the 12 metrics that are used to look at the nations that are ranked every year with these 12 metrics, and they are used for the competitiveness, the level of competitiveness of nations in this way. And so, of course, if you add the digital aspect to it, so then it makes it more efficient as a system like this. But you can see that the innovation is at the top level that is being thought. And so again, that the people are the ones that make the difference in this case. A person can think, the person can imagine things, the person or the human can create and can innovate, right? And so if we look at the innovation, there are many definitions for these innovations. However, it's the ability to take ideas and then develop them and modify them, and then until you get to implementation and commercialization. So that means the input to the innovation is the creativity. So that's where you have creativity is like the process of generating or producing novel and useful ideas in some domain, right? And then the successful or the innovation is the successful implementation of these ideas. You can see them all in green. You take the idea and then you filter it, you fund it, you develop it, implement it until the commercialization. So this is an important aspect. So now we want to ask, what is the environment that we need, so that the system can be like more efficient and productive in this way. So there's a lot of research that has been done in this area about people, how they become creative, how they can become innovative, the environment that is needed, and I'm summarizing some of those in these next slides. So there's the individual, and then there are the groups or teams, and then the next one is the organization, or you can think of that even at the nation level. So you can think about these three levels. So let's look at each one of them very quickly. So for the individual, the researchers have looked at this from 3 aspects: the personality of the individual, the motivation of this person, and then also the cognition aspect of this, okay? And then each one of them has these several aspects. So the personality is how open this person is, how free the person is in terms of their autonomy. Does this person want to work on and be independent, or do they have to be like hand-holding? The self-efficacy of the person, and so on. And then the motivation, there is an intrinsic motivation, and then there is an extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic, so this is a person who is motivated by themselves. They don't need like rewards or something like that to be able to do these things. And then the cognition aspect, this one relates to the reasoning, relates to the understanding, perception, intuition. And so the cognition has also maybe two components. One that is like uses knowledge and expertise, and then another one is the ability to be able to think in different domains, but at the same time, they call this one like a divergent thinking, but with the same aspect of what they call convergent thinking, focusing in the same domain in that way. So this is perhaps about the person. So there are some, if you look in the history, there are many people, started with maybe Grace Hopper. Was an American computer scientist and was in the military. She was also one of the first programmers of the Harvard Mark I computer, things of that sort. The second person in the middle, of course, is Alexander Graham Bell, who invented, the telephone, and then later founded the company, the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, known as AT&T. This was way back in 1885. And of course, Jeff Bezos, yes. Yeah, sorry about this. Apparently the slides are not being projected on the other side. So I was told to continue while they're trying to resolve this issue. So one of the examples that I wanted to emphasize is this one by Josephine Cochran. So Josephine Cochran is the one who invented the dishwasher. Dishwasher, as you know, is a machine that you can put plates and cups and utensils in it, and then it washes, these. How she got motivated in designing this thing. She had no mechanical experience and so on, but she had maids, and the maids, when they wash, these in China, these expensive plates and cups and so on, every now and then they break one or they chip, and she was not happy about, her china being messed up. So she decided to design this, the system. And the thing is that she did not design a robot or a machine that had two arms and it would wash like a plate like the way you and I would do. She thought of a completely different way, right? This is like a system. The objective is the same, right? However, the method is very, very different. This was way back in 1884 or 1885. So she was about maybe 70 years ahead of her time, right? And she made the prototype. She had help, I think, from a mechanic or someone to make the prototype. She patented, yes. So she had her patent in 1886. A few years after that, when she took it to Chicago, at one of the exhibitions, people thought, oh, this is not useful. Maybe you would use it in a restaurant or maybe in a hotel, but this is not. But it took until maybe the late 50s or early 60s for this dishwasher to become very common. So in her case, she was motivated by a problem, right? And she came up with this idea, and the solution was very different. She was not like mimicking the way a human would do this particular task. Another example that I want to do about the individual is the company Schlumberger, as you know, is in the oil and gas exploration. They have a few research centers. One of them is in Houston, Texas. In fact, they have two there, but you can think of them as one. Another one used to be in Connecticut, about 2.5 hours or so drive from Boston. Another center is in Cambridge, UK. But they did about some experiment, I think around maybe 2004 or so. They rented a small office, about maybe 4 people or so, that they brought from different units. And those 4 people, worked with MIT and Harvard and some universities around. And what they generated in just 1 year was like amazing. And one of them is the story here. So one of them was telling me the story that he came around to MIT talking to some of us, and one of them was a female professor in our department. She was studying snails, how the snail generate a film and moves, right? And he was telling me that as soon as she started talking about the snail, my mind went away, and I'm thinking about things that are completely different. I am interested in the oil and gas business and the drilling and all that, and she's talking to me about the snail. Until after maybe half an hour or so, she mentioned Bingham fluid, and then he said, then it caught my attention, and I asked her to please rewind, go back all the way to the beginning. I need to listen to every detail that you're talking about. So, it turns out that the Bingham fluid, this is like the same as for clay suspensions, also very similar to toothpaste and chocolate and mustard, these kind of type of fluid. But there's also the same in the drilling mud in oil wells. It turns out that from this, the research that she was doing that had nothing to do with oil and gas and drilling, but had features in it that were important, and then they collaborated in the end, had technology that was patented, and in fact is being used in that way. And so now you take people from completely two different domains. However, there was some important information there in that way. And this is what we talked about earlier about the people that are thinking maybe into different and getting ideas from different domains. The result of that, Schlumberger closed the research centers in Connecticut that existed for about 70 years and moved to a new building next to MIT in that. And so the closeness I saw on the way in, that you have a SAVIC building, here on campus, that is, I think, very important. And I'm hoping, or I'm sure that maybe in the near future we would have more companies on the campus, and that will have more discussion and collaboration, and the closeness plays an important role. Sometimes, maybe by a question, people who are paying attention. So this is Edwin Land, and so the story goes that his daughter, who was maybe like 3 years old or so, asked him a question, why does it take time, for this camera, for us to see the picture? You take a camera, you take a picture, and then you take the film to be developed, and then after several days, then you can see the picture, right? And then the story says that once, his daughter asked this question that evening, he sat down and started designing the instant camera. I don't think many people use them today, but not only he designed the camera, but also the film. And this is like the self-developing film, and also came up with the whole design in that way, from which came the Polaroid company that was launched and was in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is one of my experiences. One of the companies that was sponsoring my research, the CEO, he was dyeing his beard. And at one of the meetings, I was in his office, he was complaining about that it taking him too much to dye his beard, and it messes up his face and so on, and because of that it takes more time. And so I said, well, I don't know anything about dyeing hair. So he continued, and he said, we have two solutions that you mix, and then you have to use them within a certain time. But anyway, in the end, I said, well, this is easy. Not easy, but it would be like a good thing to focus on. This is like maybe in the early 2000s. So we designed this something like this, like a brush where you have 2 cartridges that fit in the in the handle, you have bristles with special dimensions and holes and so on, so that, you know, if you brush your hair or your beard, it does only the hair and not the skin in that way. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that a person has a mind to think with, right? And then there are these opportunities all the time. Somebody asks a question, you see something, you're not happy, the way something is being done, like Josephine Catron, and that gives you, or somebody complaining about dyeing their beard in this way, right? So this is at the individual level. You can go up now to a group or a team, and this one also has like the climate, the structure of that team, with a small group, the tasks or the characteristics of the tasks that they are doing, and also the leadership aspect of this. And then each one of them has its features. As you know, in the recent years, when we look at publications, we don't see like one author. Many times, you know, you see many authors in the papers, because the research has changed from one PI to multiple PIs, from one institution to multiple institutions that are collaborating, and also between countries in that way. And so this group, the dynamics and so on, or the culture with the groups is becoming very important. And so, or the climate of this group becomes important. So there are some of the factors that are listed here. Some of them deal with the communication, and also the aspect of people being able to contribute and their views and so on. So this maybe we don't give importance to it, but it plays an important role in this innovation and creativity. And then the next one is the structure. So whether the group has diversity in it. So two things: diversity, and then the cohesion. Cohesion is like the consistency and the interconnection of these people in this group. And so sometimes when the diversity is too big, right, you have the cohesion between the individuals maybe becoming lower and lower. And so how do you make these teams, you know, so that, you know, on one hand they have diversity in them, but at the same time there is integration and consistency between the two, right? And the other thing is the task characteristics. So this one maybe, you know, simple or maybe intuitive, is that when you have tasks that are challenging, then the people, you know, come up to that level and start thinking and creating new ideas in solving problems. You give things that are easy, and even in the teaching, you give the students easy things, you know, they just go with it. You raise the level, right, and then they can do even more in that way. And then the leaders and their style play also a key role in determining the innovation and the creativity in these groups. The leader of those teams or groups, they can create the conditions for creativity and to facilitate this innovation aspect. So here's one, one team. These are Dick Shoup and Alvy Smith. So they were in developing graphics technology, and at that time they called it Super Paint. And then somehow what they were doing did not fit in the environment and the vision of the people there from this computing point of view. And so sometimes they were maybe ignored or excluded, and of course at the end they left, right? And so they left and they teamed up with other people, and they formed a company called the Pixar that later was bought by Steve Jobs, and then later on was sold to Disney for more than $7 billion, right? And these people were actually designing and making the computer graphics that has been used, in many films, right? And one of them was called the Render Man. This is the technology that we're using. And so here you have a small team that somehow the environment was not suitable for them, and then they had to go somewhere else to continue their developments. And now you go at the top of an organization, could be a university, a company, or perhaps maybe at a larger level, a nation. And this one also has some of these issues in terms of the structure, the culture, the strategy, and then the resources that go with this. So the structure, I think this is on the left hand side, is different in this case from the group. This is at a much higher level, right? And so here it includes like the innovation or centralization. So whether like the control and so on, is it centralized at one point? So that means you have to get permission, authorization, signature, and so on. It's like a pyramid style, or it is decentralized. In fact, they found out, the researchers who study these things found out that the decentralized one is more helpful for innovation and other things that you do, rather than everything going to the top, like in a pyramid. And then, of course, the communication between the individuals, the groups, and then this whole structure. And then in terms of the culture is, what is it? It is like the environment where all of these people work, right? And it shapes how these people work, how they enjoy the environment where they are, the relationships that are built between them, and also the processes that are used, to run that environment. So this culture plays also an important role, that is on one hand supportive, maybe for risk-taking, providing like resources, giving autonomy. This is also another key factor, autonomy to these individuals and these groups, and also the recognition when people and groups do things in that way. And all of these are vital, for innovation. When you ask, what makes MIT, sometimes they say that the answer to that is the students and the faculty. These are the heart of that institution. And then they say that everybody else is there for only two functions. Okay, one is to facilitate what the students and the faculty are doing, and the second one, the phrase that the MIT administration uses, it says to get out of their way, just to let them do, what they are working on and facilitating what they do. So this is important in terms of the environment that we've been talking about. And then the strategy, of course, includes the commitment and the actions that are designed to gain competitiveness or the competitive advantage in this area of innovation. And then, you solve the problem? I'll continue now. So this is an example of organizations. Some of the companies that I work with in the Southeast Asia, do this kind of a translation, or translation meaning you take something that is being developed and then you move it very quickly to use and commercialization. So what they do is that in the company, right, there's a new idea. And that idea, whether it is related to the core business of the company, and sometimes maybe not even related to that, they quickly put a team around it, they generate, they launch as a new company. If it works out, it continues that way. If it doesn't work out, very quickly they bring everybody back, and then they regroup, and then they move on. Very quickly, generation of ideas, launching of companies, a very efficient and productive system that is used. And then the other thing in terms of universities, if you look at the ecosystem, I put only like one slide here. I'm sure that maybe you don't see it with a busy slide, but this is part of this ecosystem at MIT that has, it's not just about showing or the students how to do like a market analysis or writing like a business plan. It's a lot more than that. There are more than 50 courses, all of them on the innovation and entrepreneurship. More than 250 competitions a year with more than 1,000 students that are participating in them. More than 40 clubs in robotics, in propulsion, in electrical vehicles. And these are all run by students. The global activities, okay, these are like all outside the US. The centers for expertise and resources, programs for the individual experience and building character, and then initiative and the self-efficacy of the students. And other programs for mentoring on how to start a company and how to sustain that business. The TLO, the Technology Licensing Office. This office has more than 40 people there that help how to take the ideas, to market. The maker spaces. The maker spaces are open all the time for the students to go and make prototypes, and many times they do things that even they have nothing to do with the classes that they are taking or the research that they are doing. It's all for them and doing fabrication and so on. So these are very important aspects into this kind of ecosystem. And this is all because you would want to, MIT's motto is like mind and hands, or mans and manas, right? So you would want the students to get this hands-on experience, to build the confidence while you are building these prototypes, to also take risks and accept failures with that. And of course, in this whole process, how they develop passion in the analysis, in the making prototypes and innovation. And so perhaps another one, two things that I wanted to emphasize about how you stop innovation. Okay, so let me do this one. So imagine you're making a new, let's say, autonomous car, for example. So if you have, let's say, only 4 main units, like a car frame, a car engine, sensors, and software, right? So the car frame, people have been using these for a long time. So maybe most of it is done 90%. So perhaps you decide, just to buy that and move on. Car engines also have been, developed for a long time. Maybe there is some margin for innovation, small. Maybe 80% of it is already done. So maybe you don't focus on that one. Sensors, yes, for the navigation, for checking the environment and so on. So there is room there for innovation. And then for software, maybe there is even more. So now you have all these orange bars that are showing you the potential of things. So for me, like in a case like this one, I would focus maybe more on the sensors and the software. If my area is software, maybe only the software. And that's how you try not to innovate like everywhere. For every project, we identify the areas that have the potential, for innovation. In this case, these two, right? And that's where you put all the efforts and the added value in that way. The other problem is that people get lost in the weeds or get lost in the details. And I've seen this one many, many, many times. People start looking at the details and then they end up stuck in the details and never lift up their head, to see and come up with the new ideas. And then the other one is in terms of the research and creating ideas and so on. You'll find a lot of the people following what other people are doing. Okay, so they do what everybody else is doing. I look at this one as a highway. Highway is easy, fast. Everybody wants to go on the highway to get there faster. But there's a dirt road on the slide. Taking the dirt road, maybe you can find something there. If you don't find anything, you can come back to the highway. You don't have to say, I didn't find anything. So, but you can find many things by taking, sometimes I call this like a perpendicular. You go through a side that is different. We go back to the first question about whether a university can have the same impact. Yes. yes, you can do that. In fact, Canada with almost $2 trillion, MIT by itself has equivalent thing about $2 trillion a year. Stanford by itself also about that much or maybe more. So yes, you can, only with maybe 20,000, 25,000 people, very small land, right? At least in the case of MIT, Stanford has a much bigger land space, right? But you can create it here because you are focusing more on the human and the power of the human mind in this way. In our case, we are distinguished by our mind, right? And in fact, our culture and our religion and so on emphasizes the mind, and we were raised, our status was raised and dignified by our mind, Aql, right? And so having the mind in the right environment can make miracles, I would say. And with this, I'd like to thank you so much, and sorry about all these technical problems. I hope they can be resolved. There's an opportunity maybe here for innovation. But anyway, thank you so much.